Bonjour, hello. Avant de commencer,
Hello.
je souhaite vous
Before we
mentionner
get started, I'd like to mention to you that this event, it will be both in English and French with interpretation, simultaneous interpretation. So you can access the translation in all time on the icon of the global icon at the bottom of your screen. This meeting will be recorded.
I would like to let you know that the event will be in both English and French. Simultaneous translation will be available. You can access this by clicking on the globe icon in the bottom of your screen. Please also notice that the meeting is being recorded. Je suis Odette McCarthy. J'utilise le pronom elle.
I am Odette McCartney. I'm the General Director of Equitas, and today I am really happy to be the Master of Ceremony with you.
Before beginning, I'd like to take a moment to recognize that Equitas, the offices of Equitas are located on the unceded Indigenous territories of Kahnawake, Squamish, the Tsleil-Waututh, and Musqueam First Nation. It's very important to make this recognition at the beginning of our meeting today, because we want to express our gratitude to the caretakers of the lands and the waters on which we are situated. And in doing so, and this is where it's very important, to remind ourselves of the history of oppression that is often forgotten or neglected, and to aim to create space for dialogue and community building. It's very important for Equitas to recognize the land on which we work, because it is in this way that we raise awareness of the Indigenous presence, the land rights, and human rights in everyday life. It's also a very small but important way to recognize colonialism, its impacts, and the need for change. Land acknowledgements can easily be a token gesture rather than a meaningful practice. And at Equitas, we feel that all settlers have a responsibility to consider what it means to acknowledge our history, legacy, and the current impacts of colonialism. And in doing so, to invite reflection on privilege, the privileges that settlers are enjoying today because of colonialism, and what can be done to go beyond just acknowledging that history, and how we can actually work together to decolonize. We reflect on our actions. We reflect on the actions we take or we don't take as an organization and as individuals, and that perpetuate those colonial systems, and how settler colonialism is very linked to systemic racism. And we aim really to make better connections between those reflections and our organizational practices. It was important to take some time this morning to make this recognition. I invite you to take a look at some of the documents that we'll be putting in the chat that will, for many of you, perhaps outside of Canada, give you a sense of the path and the journey that we are on as a country, hand in hand with First Nations. And so please do take some time to take a look at those documents and reflect yourselves on actions that you can take. Nous sommes rassemblés aujourd'hui avec
gathered today with participants across the world, with members of the team, with the partners, and with the animators and invited people, and some newcomers also that are on the internship here, and invite all you, everybody else who is joining today. I'm really happy to be with you today. It's a very important moment. It's a very important moment. It's not only the ending of a great week of training, but long months of work, creation, and perseverance. Considering the context, the global context that has been really impacted by the impact, it's noticeable, definitely. And also the political instability across the world and the polarization that is being observed in our region. We cannot deny these factors have exacerbated the inequality that already were felt and existing in very many different ways across the world. And at the time where these inequality increases, the people like you, us, depending on human rights defenders in order to help us and compose with all these different tools. We must recognize also that the work of the human rights defender must continue. It is for this reason that we are very proud and happy to continue to evolve and within our work, the way we're doing it in order to respond to your request, the request of the defenders of human rights, human rights defending, international, human, all kinds of training session online is allowing us to do that. Alors,
for the past 10 weeks are real agents of change. And it's important to highlight that without that daily defense and promotion of human rights, justice and equality would not be possible. These voices are key to the social change that we're hoping to achieve. And the context in which human rights defenders work is very important to understand. And for this reason, we're very honored to count with us today, Mary Lawler, who is the United Nations Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights defenders. Mary has been the Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights defenders since May 1st, 2020. She's worked extensively with human rights defenders and their situation over the past year and a half and before. In 2001, she founded Frontline Defenders, International Foundation for the Protection of Human Rights Defenders, to help human rights defenders who were at risk. And as managing director from 2001 to 2016, Ms. Lawler represented Frontline Defenders and played a key role in its development. Ms. Lawler also headed the Irish section of Amnesty International from 1998 to 2000, and she became a member of its board. She served as chair of Amnesty International from 1983 to 1987. She is currently Associate Professor of Business and Human Rights at the Center for Social Innovation at Trinity College, Dublin Business School, and is a member of the school's advisory board. So I would ask all of you to join me in warmly welcoming Ms. Lawler, who's going to speak to us and share with us some of her thoughts on the current context that human rights defenders are facing across the world. Over to you, Ms. Lawler.
Thank you very much, Odette. And it is really good to be here with you today and to meet so many of the team and to have the opportunity to engage with so many human rights defenders. I'd like to start by speaking briefly about Human Rights Day, which we celebrated last week. At the time when the world is becoming more and more polarized, I believe the benefit in marking such occasions is to remind us of the universal values and aspirations we share, and the commitments to which governments have signed up to through their ratification of various covenants and treaties over the past 70 years. States I am in contact with too often conveniently ignore the fact that they have committed to upholding universal human rights. And I think International Human Rights Day is a good means to remind them. And of course, my favorite quote is Article 1, all human rights are, all people are born free and equal in human rights. They are endowed with reason and conscience and should act towards one another in a spirit of brotherhood. Got that wrong, sorry. Start with. So I'm going to start with the mandate and spend the next maybe 10 minutes introducing the human rights defender's mandate to you and outlining what I can do as rapporteur, so that if you need to be in touch with me in the future, you know how to contact me and what you can expect. You have to bear in mind that my mandate is limited to the protection of human rights defenders. I can't get involved in the work that you are doing to promote human rights. And I have a limited set of tools, as you'll see from this presentation. So we'll start. Okay, so we're going to talk about, first of all, special procedures. I'm what they call a special procedure. Special procedures are independent human rights experts, and this is a mechanism of the Human Rights Council, and it's carried out by different mandate holders. There's a lot of mandate holders, people working on different issues of human rights. I think there's over 50 now at the moment. So we've all been appointed by the Human Rights Council. We go through a process of interview by different member states, and then the president of the council has to recommend somebody to the council, and then you get appointed. So that's what happened to me. So the individual mandate holders like me, because I'm the special rapporteur on the protection of human rights defenders, I'm called a special rapporteur or an independent expert. And there are other special procedures, which are usually working groups, and there's 5 members, 1 from each region. And the thing we all have in common as special procedures is that we are independent. We are independent of the UN, we are independent of states, and we are independent of NGOs. We act in a personal capacity, and we aren't UN staff members, and it's a voluntary position. Next. So getting to the mandate. So this is what I'm being mandated to do, to promote the UN Declaration on Human Rights Defenders, which was adopted by consensus, as you know, in 1989, after 13 years of negotiation. So we have to promote this declaration and publicize. I have to, that's the job, to publicize the role of human rights defenders, the legitimate role of human rights defenders, and attacks on human rights defenders. Also, we're supposed to identify global trends and challenges faced by human rights defenders and recommend more effective protection strategies. The other thing we do is we engage with business, because as you know, in the context of business and human rights, a lot of violations happen, particularly when extractive industry or agribusiness is involved in so many countries around the world, and sadly, so many Canadian multinationals. And all of this is done with a gender sensitive lens. Next. So the way that we go about the work to strengthen the protection of defenders is, first of all, we have extensive consultations with defenders. I've been talking to defenders over the last year and a half, pretty much every day. And sometimes up to 3 or 4 meetings a day with defenders. So we've talked to defenders from all around the world to get a sense of what risks they face and the context in which they work. Then we engage with states, and we engage with states by these formal letters called communications. And then we follow up with meetings. And the meetings are usually about human rights defenders or legislation that they want to bring in. And I take a people-centered approach. So I'm always raising individual cases. We're supposed to do 2 country visits a year, but I haven't done any yet. We got the okay to go on a country visit just last in October, but it was impossible to set up a country visit before now, and it's set up for the beginning of the year. About May, it's not quite the beginning, the first country visit, and then I'll have another country visit later on in the year. You do 2 annual reports every year, one to the General Assembly and one to the Human Rights Council. And we have started to try and engage very much with social media, and also as much as we can with traditional media, to get out the information that we're receiving about human rights defenders and to publicize the actions that we've been taking. Yes. So when I talk about contacts with human rights defenders, we get information, as I said, from human rights defenders all over the world. And not only do I get that information into the inbox, but I attend virtually national, region, and international human rights events, workshops, and conferences, such as what I'm on now with you. Next. Now, when I started, I set myself priorities, which really arose out of my work previously, and what I saw, what in my view was the most needed. So first of all, I try and concentrate on rural, isolated, or marginalized defenders who haven't got the contacts with even sometimes national or regional organizations, and certainly not with the UN. So I'm trying to reach more people that have not been networked together with others. Women human rights defenders, because of the risks that they face, not only for who they are, but for what they do. LGBTIQ defenders. At the moment, we're just exploring the defenders on the rights of people with disability, defenders who are disabled themselves, who are at risk, or people who are working on disabled people, but are at risk. But it's very embryonic work. The next one is defenders of the rights of refugees and migrants, because we see all over the world so many defenders of refugees and migrants' rights being criminalized. And indeed, I hope, all going well, to do my next report to the General Assembly on this topic. Defenders who work against corruption. This is a new area for us, and we've just completed our draft report for the Human Rights Council in next March. Defenders on the environment, land, and Indigenous peoples' rights, particularly in the context of business and human rights. And this is a cross-cutting issue, because we see the most killings in the context of environment, land, and Indigenous peoples' rights. And overall, I try and prioritize by taking up those cases which are the most serious violations. I'm talking about torture, death threats, killings, disappearances, long-term detention. Next. Now, I mentioned communications a few minutes ago. These are really formal letters to cases about states or legislation. And oftentimes you would do them in cooperation with other mandates. Sometimes you do them by yourself. Other times you might do them with, say, a country mandate. And other times you might write, say, for example, a communication on somebody who has been tortured. So you get the special rapporteur on torture. Could be a woman, you get the special rapporteur on violence against women. And so we intersect depending on the various overlapping of violations that happens in the case. Now, you can't make these communications, as they're called, public for 60 days. So for the first 60 days, the states get a chance to respond to the allegation or the urgent appeal that you've raised. Next. So the annual report is, as I said, to the Human Rights Council and the General Assembly, and usually it's a focus on a theme. For example, my first report was on killings of human rights defenders and the threats that can sometimes, not always, precede them, and the way that human rights defenders are almost, the threats start online and offline, and then they develop into physical acts, and then the environment is created where they can be killed. So I wanted to show that killings don't always come out of nowhere. It's part of a pattern because of lots of different factors, but it's the end result. And then where companies are concerned, we've seen a lot, as you know, around the world, where companies have hired thugs who have attacked human rights defenders, particularly Indigenous people who have been trying to work on the environment or protect their lands being attacked. So we try and develop recommendations for companies and businesses and states on how to better protect. And this is where you go for this is where you make complaints to. If one of you, for example, has been targeted as a human rights defender in some way, and you want me to take up the case, you write to this address, and then depending on the capacity, I get hundreds and hundreds of cases in. So we don't have the capacity to take them all up. So as I said, I generally focus on the priorities and the severity of the attacks. And then if I have any extra capacity, it's a kind of a sliding scale down. So that's pretty much it about the mandate. And there'll be time for questions from anyone who wants later on. But meanwhile, I'll continue with my remarks. So I was in Oslo last week doing a number of speaking engagements. And one of the questions I keep getting asked is, and it pretty much everywhere, whether I agreed with the consensus that the world was getting worse and that the situation was getting worse for human rights defenders. And I don't like this question because I've been doing this work for 40 years. And when I started in the 70s, between the 70s and now, I've seen waves of improvements and disimprovements for those who stand up for the rights of others. Countries go up and down, and it really depends at a particular point of time. However, I mean, I do think back on to the 70s and the awful dictatorships in power in Latin America, where human rights activists and were kidnapped and killed in big football stadiums, and their children taken away, and others were other dissidents, as they were called then, were taken up in planes and dropped from dropped out of planes to be disappeared and murdered in their thousands. And I think of people like Idi Amin in Uganda and the other tyrants, for example, in Equatorial Guinea and Central African Republic, and the apartheid regime in South Africa, and the terrible violations being carried out in the what was then the Soviet Union, the USSR, where people were being injected with psychotropic drugs and put in psychiatric hospitals and prisons for very, very long terms. And then, of course, you have China, you know, and the Cultural Revolution and the history of violations in China. So compared with that time, I think you can say that women human rights defenders are freer now than they were in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and the LGBTIQ community a bit as well, though still under siege in many places, because as we all know, in patriarchal or fundamentalist societies, where women or LGBTI people defy cultural or cultural or societal norms or stereotypes, they are targeted in a very serious way. And then I was reminded that, you know, it's all very well for me to talk about the 70s, but for some of you who are much younger, growing up, say in the 90s, there was a kind of a peaceful period where the world was very hopeful, and since then, the situation politically has changed in the last 20 years with the breakup of the Soviet Union, and that started out by being such a hopeful time. The ending of apartheid started out by being such a hopeful time, and also the democratic waves in Latin America, which started to happen, and sub-Saharan Africa, and of course the agreement on the Declaration on Human Rights Defenders in 1998. But despite this, I think the progress made by the human rights movement in that time has been significant. I don't think it's an overestimation to say that there are more human rights defenders working in more countries on more issues than ever before, and they're better networked at any time than at any time in history, and are making progress at the international level despite huge pushback in the last 20 years, as I said. In the past year alone, for example, we have seen the entry into force of the Escazú Agreement, which empowers environmental human rights defenders in Latin America, the creation of a rapid response mechanism of the Aarhus Convention, which legally obliges states that are party to the convention to protect defenders, and the recognition by the UN Human Rights Council of the human right to a clean, healthy, and sustainable environment. There has been progress in mandatory human rights due diligence for business, while in Africa, I have witnessed the further development of national and regional human rights defender networks. I've also seen human rights defender-led pushback on surveillance technology, leading to the recent blacklisting of the NSO group in Israel by the US government. So with the above in mind, there are a number of trends I see continuing today, and although not new, they continue to have a detrimental impact on the safety and security of human rights defenders. Human rights defenders continue to be killed in large numbers. As I said, my first thematic report was on the situation of killings of human rights defenders. And this is an absolute red line for me. There are hundreds of human rights defenders being killed every year, particularly in Latin America and Asia, and I'm sure in Africa too, and the Middle East, except we're not hearing about them so much. But in my killings report, I outlined how since between 2015 and 2019, 1,329 human rights defenders were killed in 64 countries. That's a third of the member states of the UN. To me, that is absolutely so shocking. You're all aware, and sometimes, no doubt from personal experience, of the types of restrictive legislation that's being used to silence human rights defenders. Governments have taken advantage of the pandemic to introduce more, but it has been a clear trend, perhaps beginning with counter-terrorist legislation introduced in the wake of 9/11. Since then, I've seen scores of human rights defenders sentenced under national security or counter-terrorism charges. And in my most recent report to the General Assembly, I highlighted the cases of 148 human rights defenders in 24 countries who had been sentenced to 10 years or more, or who had the possibility of a 10-year sentence for their peaceful work. And of those already sentenced, 93% had been charged with terrorist or national security crimes. And these types of charges allow states to keep human rights defenders in prison for longer and subsequently mistreat them in prison for longer. And they are forgotten about by us all. They are forgotten about by the international community. States don't take up their cases. NGOs don't take up their cases. Over time, they just fade away and are left to rot in these terrible conditions. The targeting of human rights defenders online continues to present grave risks to defenders and their families. And the tech companies have simply been too slow to respond. I know this is an issue too, of course, for women defenders, women politicians, or any woman in the public eye with a social media profile. I'm quite conflicted by the role of social media, as I've seen great potential to link up defenders, to spread awareness about cases and to exert pressure. I remember particularly the case of Justina Mokoko in Zimbabwe, who was disappeared. And it was a time Facebook had just started. And in the old days, we'd be trying to ring up the lawyers or send telexes, trying to get information from people, families, or lawyers who were working. And it was a very long, drawn out, slow, and really, to be honest, not very effective in many cases process. But, you know, then the Facebook happened and the lawyers put up everything about Justina on her. They created a page for her and put up everything about her. And it allowed all those organizations like ours to work on her behalf. And in my case, I was lucky enough to have the mobile phone number of the Interior Minister in Zimbabwe, which he had given to me in a moment of, I reckon, he had a moment and he gave me his number. And so I was able to ring him every day and ask him what was happening. So that's where I see the positive side of social media. And even myself, I use Twitter as a form of advocacy in a way that is sometimes more effective than the formal UN channels of communication, because the UN, there's no point in saying otherwise. It's a huge, big bureaucratic system with an awful lot of rules and procedures, and everything takes a lot of time. And if you're a human rights defender and you're in danger and you need quick action, you need to have some way of putting out the information and trying to advocate. And so this is what I do on Twitter with cases which I know will be too slow going through the UN system, but I do always try to follow up. And I've seen also the great harm that human rights defenders can be subjected to online: smear campaigns, trolling, doxing, and all the other coordinated ways that aggressors use to target those peacefully defending the rights of others. I myself have had contact, lots of meetings with Facebook on these issues a number of times. They have brought in a human rights policy, and they have brought in a specific piece on human rights defenders. And they do now recognize the role and vulnerabilities of human rights defenders, but the platform is still not effective enough to quickly sanction those who are abusing human rights defenders online. It's not transparent, and there aren't enough people working to make sure that the accounts are taken down. So the last trend I want to highlight is around the issue of human rights defenders working on corruption. There's a huge international infrastructure dedicated to fighting corruption, but human rights and human rights defenders have been largely omitted from it. My next report to the Human Rights Council will be on the issue, and I see it as trying to further bring in anti-corruption activists to the human rights framework, so that we can better understand the type of obstacles that they face, and they can better understand the types of support available to them. And in the questions and answers, I'd be very interested to hear from you. Have any of you worked on corruption issues and the challenges that you face? So I'll finish now by briefly addressing some of the questions that came in from you earlier this week. So the first question was, in your opinion, what makes a good human rights defender, and what is the hardest part of being one? Well, to be honest, you know, if you defend human rights, you're a good human rights defender. There aren't bad human rights defenders unless you're motivated by something that isn't in line with the spirit of the Declaration of Human Rights Defender, the Declaration on Human Rights Defenders. It always takes courage and conviction to stand up for the rights of other people. And I'd never criticize anyone for doing that. And in fact, you know, the most important qualities, I think, when you are defending the rights of others is to be persistent and to be polite and not to give up. What I can say, though, that is, you know, the more effective you are, as I said, you will find that it's persistence, planning, and prioritizing that will increase your effectiveness. First of all, you have to keep going, no question about it. You can't just hope that you do to take an action and all will be well. All is never well. Human rights is just building brick by brick. It's like one little tiny step at a time. And all we can hope for is little victories that will contribute to more victories in the long run. Planning, it's good to plan because you need to know what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. You need to know who your stakeholders are, who it is that will have influence on making whatever you're trying to do, the outcome of it more positive. So who has influence on that? And prioritizing, because you can't do everything. So you have to prioritize in a way where you focus on one or two things to achieve and put your energy into that, and a good analysis of how you get there. The hardest part of being a human rights defender, I think you're all in a better position than me to say that. So I'll wait until I hear from you after I finish these other questions. How do we change the perception that human rights work is only for those people whose rights are being denigrated? Is the second question. And you see, when I hear that, you all know, I'm sure, the famous Pastor and Niemöller poem. First they came from the socialists, and first they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I wasn't a socialist. And then they came, and it goes on. And the last line is, and then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me. And if you don't have your rights currently being violated, you know, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't be defending the rights of others, because if we don't defend the rights of others, those rights, such as economic rights or civil liberty rights or challenging injustice or overreach by government, they'll become a reality. You know, you need to be a crowbar in the system wherever you are, so that bit by bit you can monitor what is going on and try and make sure that the injustice doesn't slide back, justice doesn't slide backwards. And the only way that will happen is if everyone becomes a human rights defender. We are seeing semi-authoritarian contagion spread in different regions of the world, and the way to stop that spread is to challenge it. And this, we know, is difficult. And particularly in societies where there's popular movements and cultural norms and everything, it is always difficult. It is always difficult to go against the prevailing norms and when I say prevailing norms, I'm talking about unjust norms. And it's always the poor and the marginalized who will be victims of human rights and who really have very few people to stand up for them. And that is the way that society will change, and you'll change society. You'll build civil and just societies by taking on the defense of human rights, even if you're not in danger yourself or being targeted yourself. And that brings me back to the small victories. I think it's really important to celebrate your small victories because the work can be hard and it can be lonely and it can be soul destroying. But if you remember the kind of things that you have been able to do that you're proud of, it's a very good motivator for you. So I would encourage you all to dwell a little bit on those small victories. The next question I was asked was how COVID-related restrictions have been used to restrict the space in which human rights defenders move. And as I mentioned, the most obvious manifestation of this has been legislation that has been used to restrict a number of freedoms. And of course, legislation is necessary for the public good. But you have to be careful that it isn't misused in a way to target human rights defenders. For example, indigenous communities in Latin America were sitting ducks because business were allowed to operate as normal. But those defenders that were being targeted couldn't move because of COVID restrictions. So that put them in much more danger than they would have been had they been without this restriction. Women human rights defenders, of course, have been impacted by the increase in caring duties, as often they're the primary carers in the family. And they have less time to do their human rights work. And often women are being targeted not only by states, but by their own communities and sometimes from even within their own families. And they have been locked in with partners. And we've seen a huge spike in domestic violence generally. And the LGBTI community has been forced indoors, with defenders continuing to do their work at home. And then, of course, having to out themselves to their families, increasing the risks that they face. But leaving all that aside, I think the human rights defender community has demonstrated the huge value they hold in society by their responses to COVID and how they organize to provide care, shelter, and medical assistance for the most vulnerable. The last question I was asked was the situation of human rights defenders in conflict zones. What is the role of the UN in the protection and promotion of human rights defenders in conflict zones? For example, in 2019, precisely on May the 31st, two Burkina Faso human rights defenders from a youth organization, namely the Democratic Youth Organization of Burkina Faso, were murdered on their way to an audience with the High Commissioner of the Yagna province. And their bodies are still in a morgue awaiting autopsy. The organization has requested this so that responsibilities can be determined, but the Burkina government refuses the autopsy. What does the United Nations think about this situation? Well, I'm not the United Nations. I am the special rapporteur on defenders. I'm independent of the United Nations. But so I'm not aware of this case at the moment until now, until yesterday when I was preparing. And I can only act on information that I receive. And given that the killing of human rights defenders is one of my priorities, if you send this case to my inbox, I guarantee you I will review it. And if appropriate, I'll write to the government of Burkina Faso about it. But I will need as much information detailing the incident and the facts around it as you can give, because the one thing I can't do is take up cases where I'm not sure of the facts. Otherwise, it exposes me to ridicule by states. And I'm trying to build a kind of a relationship with states whereby they trust my information that I will be accurate. I can understand the frustration that the human rights defender mandate has not commented on such and such a case. I don't know if you sent this in before my time, but I promise you, if you send it in again with enough information, I'll take it up with the government of Burkina Faso. And again, Ed will put in the chat box, the inbox to send it to. Now, there is one thing that you absolutely need to do anytime you are sending cases. You need to have consent. I can't take up a case without the consent of the person involved. Now, clearly these two poor people are dead, but a family member or a lawyer needs to give consent for me to take up the case. More generally, I see my role in conflict zones is to keep a focus on human rights defenders. For instance, in the last year in Afghanistan, I've been consistently raising the targeting killings of human rights defenders as the Taliban made their way towards Kabul. And similarly, I'm following the situation in Sudan at the moment very closely and trying to get all the information I can about attacks on defenders. The same is true of Ethiopia, Cameroon, and another number of countries currently with some level of conflict. I think it's really important because the human rights defenders on the ground in conflict zones are the eyes and ears of the human rights community. And if you have trusted sources who are able to tell you exactly what is happening, then you won't get fake news or politicized news. You'll get the truth. And that's what we need to hear, the truth. And who will tell you the truth? Human rights defenders. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mary. That was a very, very broad and yet very deep overview. And thank you for also answering the questions that we collected for you. Very, very thoughtful. I know that the participants and the attendees today have more questions and would love to dialogue with you directly. And so I'm going to hand it over to Hervé, who's our senior education specialist on the Global Rights Connection team, who's going to facilitate the kind of back and forth from the attendees today.
Thank you for the presentation. So for participants, as the other presentation, please, you can raise your hand or write your question on the chat and we will read it. Thank you again for the presentation. The 4 questions you received will come from the 4 groups who participate during Global Rights Connection. So I will leave a few seconds for people to have a possibility to raise their hands.
And I would also like to hear if anyone has experience, as I said, working on corruption. I'd also like to hear some of the small successes that you've had. And for those of you who haven't interacted with the Human Rights Defender mandate before, what stopped you? Thank you. They're my questions.
Merci. Robert, if you want.
Yes. Good evening. Can you hear me? Good to hear me.
Yes, we can hear you. Yes.
Yes, my name is Robert Mugisa. I am from Uganda. I work with the Human Rights Center Uganda. Very happy to hear from Mary. I work with Madame Margaret Sekaja, who was also once the UN Special Rapporteur. So I'm pleased to listen in and to be part of this forum. I just want to appreciate the message, but also to share my success. I work a lot on human rights work, and recently the National Coalition of Human Rights Defenders in Uganda and partners, including Defend Defenders and the Embassy of Netherlands, gave me an award for using music to promote human rights. For me, it's a great achievement as a human rights defender, but I also do so many other things. So I can really testify and speak about our role as
Robert, I think we lost you.
human rights defenders to say that the work is really too much. Sometimes we are limited here and there, and thank you.
Thank you, Robert. I don't know if it's only me, but I didn't hear everything. Maybe you can write it on the chat and we will read it. It will be easier. Thank you again
that would
for
be
your
good.
story. Does someone else want to share answers or ask questions? Yes, Christina.
While the participants get ready. Hi, Mary, Christina Sganga. I have a question and a success to share. The question is there a particular form or format in the website where people can see what they need to send you in terms of information? Because some rapporteurs have such form, and I was wondering if you could share that information with us so that we know. And my little great success is, as a result of this course, facilitating this course with Unduko, one of the participants who before had not considered dealing with the issue of LGBTQI has now made a press release, and Fine Face, maybe you're going to talk about it. And his organization in Nigeria is also now going to put LGBTQI rights at the forefront of their organization. So a training and just somebody else who's going to be a committed activist also fighting for LGBTQI rights. I'm very proud of Fine Face and of the opportunity to be part of this great success. Thank you, Mary.
That is really amazing. Can you seriously, can you write that? Ed, I think has put the link in the chat for the form. I have a website. I don't know what it is, but I think Ed has put it in the chat. And on that, there is a link to how you can submit complaints to the inbox, how you can, ask for a communication. And so that's all laid out for you on the website in a way that we hope is easy to navigate. But regarding the small successes, I would really, there's also a place on the website for if you want to contact the special rapporteur, and it would be really good for us. We're always looking for evidence of the good positive stories from human rights defenders, because not only is it a huge achievement in itself, but it's also a great motivator for everyone else. So if you wouldn't mind just writing a paragraph on that, and Ed, I think we'll start now putting up, we'll talk to Fee about putting up a section. I don't know if we still have it, maybe you could, if we started it yet, a section where we can highlight positive results. Do we have that?
I don't think we have a standalone section, but I've just put the contact link again into the chat if people will be willing to share some of their successes there.
Yeah, and I think we should make that part of what we do in the website, so people can get a morale booster from seeing what some of their colleagues have done.
Thank you, Christina. Fine Face, do you want to share with us just few words, sorry, to explain it a bit more? You're just online, we were not sure.
Thank you for the opportunity, everyone. I really appreciate, this time given. Christina, everyone, thank you, Mary. I enjoyed your presentation and I really appreciate the work you are doing for all of us from the nooks and crannies of this world, including Nigeria. I truly appreciate this opportunity. Yeah, so I will be speaking on behalf of Group 4, the few things we have to say as part of our participation in this program and what the program has been to us and the benefit we have derived from this program. So the first one is what the Global Rights Connection Program meant, to me as a person and every other member of the program, including Group 4. The Global Rights Connection Program meant a lot to me, my community and organization, the Youth and Environmental Advocacy Center, YEAC Nigeria. The program brought us the best of human rights education and advocacy training that we have ever had. The GROC program has built my capacity and more confidence in human rights education, advocacy, and defense beyond my expectation. I never knew it was going to be this much. The 10 weeks training gave me full dose of human rights education with practical experiences that equipped me with requisite knowledge and skills in human rights education. As a human rights educator, the training further built my confidence, increased my profile and credibility in the diversity delivery of human rights education to my community, with changes in higher education level acceptability in my human rights education training program came from Equitas. An embodiment of 54 years experience in human rights education, that is Equitas. The best of strategies, innovation, techniques, and approaches of human rights education that the GROS program offers is second to none, to the best of my knowledge, thus serving as a springboard of our global recognition and connection in human rights education. Among others, not only make me a participant in this program, but also as if we were teaching. Sorry, I missed a line there. Now, the next one is that what my thoughts are on the program. My thoughts about the program are that it is the best form of education that I have ever received in terms of delivery method and ability to ensuring that knowledge is effectively and intensively transferred to learners, with every training material exhaustively read by participants and indicated in the online system. I have studied in university and other forms of training, but never in any program I have participated in all through my life, even in my degree programs, that I have read all the recommended textbooks and materials. But this particular program, the way it is designed, it compelled me to read every material. Otherwise, you don't move to the next level. So it's great. So the combination of the asynchronous and synchronous sessions ensure that I learn intensively at my pace and return to the asynchronous session where the spiral and participatory learning methodologies are adopted, among others, to not only make me and other participants participate fully, but also as if we are teaching while still receiving the training. The program's combination of different tutorials and learning techniques, as well as the use of instructional materials like graphics, videos, case studies, deepen my understanding of the topics. Furthermore, in demonstrating my thoughts about this program as designed and its effectiveness, on December 6th, I released a press statement in Nigeria advising and calling on the governments and higher institutions in the country that they should learn from Equitas and adopt this system of training to improve the falling standard of education in the country. The statement, which is available online, is titled Adopt In-Campus Asynchronous Session to Improve Education as a Human Right in Nigeria. Advocacy Center tells government, higher institutions. I studied in Group 4, where Christina and Ndupo are facilitators, with Sasha pressing all the right buttons behind the scene, and Harvey playing oversight monitoring, mentoring functions for me and all participants to have the best and successful training experience. My interaction with other participants on the program in Group 4 from around the world, including Justine, Hannah, Ntoto, Lucky, Yarid, Adewale, Sonara, Tracy, Ivy, and Bernard, among others, enriched my experience of the cultural practice globally. My human rights education experience offered by Equitas to this program is second to none. So, my favorite events throughout the period of this training was the cultural exchange. So, my favorite event in culture during the Global Rights Connection, my program was the cultural exchange held on November 22nd. It was my favorite event because I got to see my course mates from around the world dressed in their cultural attires and shared knowledge and slides that taught me about their cultural practices, including their food, dance, and other things. The event exposed me to many cultures around the world that I have never knew about, and I am grateful to Equitas for that cultural exchange event. On completion of the implementation of my individual plan, the knowledge acquired from this program will be used to continually improve the work that I am doing in Nigeria on a daily basis and the human rights education activities that I carry out. This will include our annual program titled Youth Training on Human Rights, Conflict Resolution and Peace Building Mechanism in the Niger Delta. We started this program in 2018. The next thing I'm going to apply the knowledge from this program for is to train youths who are involved in human rights defense under our program titled the 1 Million Youth Volunteers Network of Human Rights Defenders and Promoters in the Niger Delta. We started this in 2019. And the last and not the least initiative we are going to use the knowledge from this program to do is the sensitization and awareness creation of human rights among youths and students in Rivers State. We started this program in secondary schools and universities in 2019 to build the culture of human rights in the young people so that they can grow into the society with the awareness of human rights. Let me stop here to say the least about how this program has impacted us. I really appreciate the opportunity. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, friend Felix. It was really a pleasure to hear you and to hear you share your thought about Global Rights Connection and what happened next. We will share on the chat the press release, a link to access to the press release. Before we have other question, I have Robert message. So thank you so much. I was saying that I appreciate Mary Lawler for her great insight. I work with Human Rights Center Uganda, and our executive director is Madame Margaret Sikagia, I'm sorry if I mispronounced certainly, who was once a UN Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights defenders. I'm happy that through human rights defending work, I received an award on 9th December 21 for using music to promote human rights. I can testify that the work is demanding, but when we know we have this mechanism, we can always move on with our advocacy work. Robert Mujisa. Thank you, Robert, and also Robert share 2 links to access this music. There is other question or someone who answer small, medium, large results from your human rights defender work.
Can we hear from our friend in Sri Lanka? If she, if whoever it is happy to speak publicly about it, I leave that over to you. I got your message anyway, and if you're not comfortable speaking publicly, that's fine.
Hello, thank you, Mary, for flagging that. I just thought of sharing our experience working on the issue of sexual bribery, since you raised the point about corruption. So in Sri Lanka, yes, there are organizations like Transparency International working on the issue of corruption overall. But since 2015 or 16, the organization I work for, it's called the Center for Equality and Justice. We've been studying the issue of sexual briberies, especially among war-affected women in all three communities, that is the three main ethnic groups in Sri Lanka. So we've been studying the issue and conducting some research studies, and using the recommendations, we have been lobbying and advocating, especially with the Bribery Commission in Sri Lanka. So one success has been that they have incorporated the definition that we suggested for the Bribery Act, which defines bribery to specifically include the definition of sexual gratification. And they have included that in the National Action Plan for Corruption. And simultaneously, I mean, we are still continuing to engage in several other research studies. And this year we are starting another study on women, other than women affected by war and LGBTIQ persons who are impacted by the same issue. And we are continuing our advocacy and lobby work to see how we can influence the reform of law. So the corruption is looking at the gendered angle of corruption, not only broadly, blanketly, and disregarding the gender element of it. So just wanted to share that experience and the work that we are continuously doing on this issue.
Thank you very much, Ando. Can you give your email to Ed, because there's a lot of information in that would be very useful to me for the forthcoming report when I have to be able to answer questions and make some remarks.
Most certainly, I'd be happy to, more than happy to share. I will drop a message. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Does someone else? Okay, I have a question for you. I'm working with ECTAS from few years now, and it's always difficult for participants of our trainings. I identify themselves as human rights defender, even if they're working on local community to promote participation or in any kind of organization. For you, what do you think you can say to help people identify themselves as human rights defender?
I think it's up to people to decide how they want to define themselves. First of all, I mean, we know, for example, a lot of women human rights defenders don't define themselves as such. They define themselves as women activists or something like that. For me, when I obviously use the human rights defender definition for anyone who is acting in accordance with the UN Declaration on Human Rights Defenders, promoting either individually or in association with others, promoting human rights and fundamental freedoms and protecting them. So assuming it's peaceful and for the rights of others, then I see them as human rights defenders if they're at risk. And if somebody defines themselves as something, that's fine by me. What I just say is, like, if I get a complaint in and looking for communication and somebody just defined as a women's activist for example, I will, or a lawyer, a human rights lawyer, or a journalist, and if they have been targeted for their human rights work, then I will just put in journalist and human rights defender, lawyer and human rights defender, women's activist and human rights defender. So, I mean, I think educating people on the declaration obviously is something that can help them understand that they are also human rights defenders. I mean, when I started, LGBTI people didn't see themselves as human rights defenders, for example, and often others that had dual roles but were working on human rights issues and were targeted for that. Didn't see themselves as human rights defenders. And certainly with the next report on anti-corruption, there's definitely been a division between anti-corruption activists and human rights defenders. And it depends on how they want to define themselves, and also, you know, how to bring people who are working on anti-corruption, because it is an issue of grave concern, how they can also call themselves human rights defenders if they so choose. I mean, obviously you have to leave it up to the person concerned, but anyone that I have ever explained that the work they are doing is more than they think it is. They are defending rights. They are defending really important, inalienable human rights. They tend to then take on the term human rights defender, as well as what they, you know, what their normal way of describing themselves is. I don't know if that helped. What's your experience?
I will share this question with everyone, not only me, with participants too, and also from colleagues from Equitas.
All right. Well, what is the experience then? Anyone want to share some of the experience of that? And also, as I said, has anyone how many people knew how to interact with the mandate before today's session?
Ivy, you have raised your hand.
I want to share my experience, and I also linked with the question with that. I was actually getting very upset, and I was not able to take the whole presentation where he was presenting so much a large number of human rights defenders are being affected. So I really could not take all the things. I just last 10 minutes I took a break that I cannot listen all the information. My question is actually what to do in the organizations who are working for persons with disabilities. They are charity-based organizations at first, that they are providing some assistive devices, some health treatments or education services, but they are not actually recruiting persons with disabilities in their own organizations. Even if they are recruiting, they are not actually, there is extreme level mental torture and injustice within the organizations. I have been victimized, and I have seen in this, it's a very renowned organization in my country. I can say that one of the leading funding organization, they are providing funding to the national organizations, and I joined there at a very senior position, disability inclusion coordinator. That is as a women. Sorry, I have to introduce myself. I am a burn-affected, burn-related woman with physical disability. So there was a reserved position for person with disabilities. They circulated that position, and I got that job, being the first person in the interview process. After that, actually, when I was giving the feedback from their first training, that this is actually wrong definition of the women, wrong definition of disability according to the UNCRPD. Since then, actually, the conflict started, and the organization never ever allowed me to explain the right-based approach explanations. And finally, actually, there are a series of injustice. They have done lots of things you can understand, and they finally dismissed me. And actually, before that, there was a survey they conducted among the partner organizations' colleagues against me. which was not actually without my consent. All the things, they have violated my all rights within the organization. And I have been, still now I have been fighting. I have filed the case within in our local authority. And this is in the Human Rights Commission. The case is dealing by the Human Rights Commission. But my question is up to you, when these kind of organizations, international organizations even, they are emerged from the charity-based organization, but now they are moving towards human rights organizations. But within their organization, they are not actually practicing equality for the person with disabilities. And I must say, there may be, if in Bangladesh, actually LGBTQ rights is not open. However, the persons are, they are not actually allowed to expose their identity. Even in the human rights organizations, some people are working, I have no idea that they are getting their equal rights in their organizations or not. So what to do actually? We are talking that the states are not allowing us, but the organizations who are promoting for these rights, they are not also even allowing us for equal rights. So what to do in that situation? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ivy, and thank you for sharing. I would really like you also to follow up afterwards so we can have a proper discussion and meeting, because to be honest, you have a lot of information there that is difficult for me to take in. And we are just beginning to do our research on disability human rights defenders. And it would be very useful for us if we could connect with you and talk and get more of a, that was very short, you know, we need to, and in the meantime, if you could send us a structured, you know, testimony of what happened.
Okay.
If you wouldn't mind, that would be really useful. And then Ed will, if you send it to Ed, where will Ivy contact us?
I've just sent Ivy my email address in the chat.
Okay, Ivy, you send that information to Ed. He's just sent you a direct message with his email address. And then after we get it, we'll arrange and put your contact, well, the email will be there, but put your contact, oh no, if email's there, it's fine. So we'll set up a meeting with you once we review the information, but to make it easier for us, because we have so many cases in so many countries all around the world, and I can't keep up. If it's always easier if you write it out in a kind of a methodological, you know, by as it happened, you know, so that there's a timeline of what happened when, and then we'll be able to go through it with you and ask you further questions. Okay?
Yeah, thank you so much. Thank you.
No bother. Okay, Ivy.
We have two other person, Hannah.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. I'd like to thank Mary for that presentation, that very comprehensive presentation to her mandate. I just want to say that as a member of the Human Rights Council Net, we have had some working relationship with her mandate, as well as other mandates at the level of the United Nations. One of the areas that we have as the African Center for Democracy and Human Rights Studies based in Gambia, what we have been doing is as the focal point for NGOs that work with the African Commission on Human and People's Rights, we have tried to bridge the gap between mechanisms at the UN and mechanisms at the regional level, particularly at the African Commission on Human and People's Rights. And we have also been part of the development of the roadmap which highlighted and documented the need for collaboration. And just recently on Human Rights Day, we've seen the joint statement between the two mandates. And it's very important for us as human rights defenders to see the mandates working together, because that will also enhance our interventions at the national and regional levels, because some of the states will take their state reports to the UN, but not to the regional system. So if there is a collaboration between the systems, you find out that whatever information is at the UN can also be shared at the regional level, and therefore with NGOs at the national level. So I want to congratulate Mary. I know the good work that she has been doing, and I've had the privilege of meeting Ed in Cote d'Ivoire a few months ago. We are pleased, and if there is anything we can do to support your work, please reach out. Thank you very much.
Yeah, and thank you, because to be honest, Hannah, Africa has been underrepresented by the mandate over many years, and we are trying to redress the balance. So we're particularly looking for human rights defenders in Africa to give us information and to keep us up to date and to cooperate with us. We have tried to reach out to the African Commissioner on Remy, I can't remember his second name.
Reningoy.
Yeah, without success. We made a couple of attempts, and we will try again in the new year. I totally agree with you that it would be really good if we could work together. I remember previously when Madame Wren was there, I had a great relationship with her. You know, so it does make it much more effective and easier if, as you say, if the UN mandate can work with the regional mandate in Africa. So I hear your point. Ed has it on his list. And we will follow up in the new year, okay?
Yes, I will try to do a link up with Chairman Reningoy. I just came back on Saturday from Senegal. We had a consultation on civic space and the need to develop an action plan for human rights defenders. So I will definitely reach out to him and to find out how the two of you can.
And if he just sets a time, we can, if he just gives us a time and a date, we can send a Zoom link,
All right. Thank you very much. I'll do my best. Yes.
Because we're at this stage happy to work around him, Okay.
Thank you. Congratulations again.
Une dernière question, sorry. Une dernière question de
A last
Patrick.
question for Patrick.
Merci Hervé, merci Madame la rapporteure. Pour votre question. Mon nom est Patrick Camille de Haïti. Ma question est la suivante. Lorsque dans un
Question is the following. Thank you for all of you. The gang armed their assets to the human rights. And the government, the authorities in general, seems to be overwhelmed by this situation, or may not have the will on the gang actions of the country. What is the role of the system of human rights in general in order to counteract that, and the role of your mandate of the protection of your human rights? Concretely, what is it exactly? We have no sound.
Sorry, you're talking about, he was talking about armed gangs.
In Haiti, yes,
Yeah,
would take
okay.
control of the state.
Yeah, well, I'm
Des
afraid,
groupes armés et de l'incapacité du gouvernement à
The
répondre.
armed gangs and the incapacity of the government to respond to this action.
yeah, I mean, I don't have a mandate for that. My mandate is simply and only for human rights defenders who are at risk because of their human rights work. So armed gangs are outside my mandate, but what I can say is, regardless of whether the state does or doesn't respond, for whatever reason, they are still responsible for the human rights of their citizens. I don't know if there is, I don't know how, to be honest, I don't know if and how the UN as a body could be involved in that. I maybe, is there a field office on the ground or anything like that? Because Patrick, the only thing I can do is take up the cases. You asked specifically and simply, and this is it. I can take up the cases of any human rights defender who has been working against the injustice of armed gangs and raise those cases with the government. That's what my mandate does.
Anybody answering?
Yeah, oh, there are a few comments. So Patrick is explaining for all human rights defenders, there is a threat. There is few answers about the definition of, yes, and Duco, you can go by yourself. It will be easier.
And then I'm afraid I have to leave because I have another meeting, but I wait for you.
Okay. Yeah, thank you for your powerful presentation and sharing of perspectives. I was just reacting to Harvey's question on who is a human rights defender. And I've typed in the chat that my experience is that in some cases, people have assumed that being a human rights defender is a profession or a career of sorts that might need some form of certification, qualification, or credentialing. And this way, many people have taken a position, a human position of doing something to ensure greater respect for everyone, to promote dignity, justice, shy away from viewing themselves as a human rights defenders because of a myth that those who openly say they're human rights defenders have some certification or qualification. And I think it's something in our community that we need to do to break the barrier that anyone is and can be a human rights defender, depending on what position they've chosen in their own spaces to promote human rights principles and values. And this also reminds me that for a long time working with children, you find young people asking you, what do I need to qualify to be an activist? As if to do right, to promote equal respect, equal dignity for all requires a certain qualification. And it could be that the confusion by some that being a human rights defender is a career has promoted these notions that there's a certain qualification that, for example, a journalist, a lawyer, a teacher, a trader, a student requires for them to be termed. So I think the titling, we really need to help those we work with to break these barriers that there's nothing too special about being a human rights defender except choosing to do right, choosing to promote respect for human rights, values, and dignity for all human beings.
Very well said, very well said. I totally agree with you. And I think it is very clear that we have to try and make sure that everyone understands that you don't need anything to be a human rights defender. You just need a good attitude. And you need to be motivated by wanting to, improve the rights of others, as you said, dignity and respect for others' rights. You said you're working on children. I am trying also to develop work on children as human rights defenders. Because now we're seeing some children, not many, but some children that we've come across who have been targeted because of their work for the rights of other children. For example, say an Indigenous child looking for education for his community in their own language, or children working on climate justice, where they have been, subjected to threats because of their work on climate justice. So I'm very interested and anxious to hear about those children that are human rights defenders. And I also, I know when I came into this work, one of the first cases that really inspired me to get involved in human rights was this little boy called Iqbal in Pakistan, who was he had been sold as a carpet to help make carpets by his father to this guy that he owed $400 to. And this little boy was 8 when he went there, and he made a couple of escapes and didn't succeed. But when he was 12, an organization, a human rights defender organization, freed him and brought him into school, and he developed a desire to work for all the other little children who were slave laborers in carpet factories. And anyway, he got very well known. He walked around, he worked everywhere he went abroad, explaining the story and all that. But sadly, he was killed by the carpet owners who were a cartel. So I'm very aware that there are some children that we need to be looking out for and need to be trying to do something on. So if you have information on that, I would very much like to hear it. Thank you very much. Edward, and maybe you can follow up. I'm sorry, I really have to go now, but it's been a great pleasure for me to be here with you all today. Thank you.
Mary, thank you very much for taking time this morning. Thank you for your humanity and engaging with all of us so simply and so genuinely. Would you honor us with a little screenshot? If everybody who's comfortable turns on their screen, we'd love to have a screenshot.
If you send it to us, we'll tweet it.
That's great. And we're going to make sure that folks have all the coordinates. Just make sure they can follow up with you directly. So we'll make sure that goes up. So if everyone wants to put on their camera, whoever feels comfortable doing so, we're going to take a screenshot.
Just wait for everyone to have the cameras open. Okay, so everybody, 3, 2, 1, smile. Perfect, we'll get a picture.
Thank you, merci Mary.
Bye-bye everyone.
Wait, we'll be in touch. Bye. So we're going to move into the next part of the clothing ceremony. So much, I'm sure I'm not alone. There's so many things going through my mind right now, and it would have been fantastic to continue the discussion. But we'll move on with our program and have an opportunity to hear from participants and facilitators. I want to first start off by congratulating all of the participants who successfully completed the program. I think there's a real recognition that you were perseverant and you worked very hard over the past 10 weeks. You challenged yourselves, you challenged each other. And I think it's important to recognize that you made the program what it is because you were able to bring in your experience and yourselves into the program. I'd like everybody, all the attendees, to go into the link and to share in the chat a word that would best describe what the Global Rights Connection has meant for you. And if you could do that, so there's a link that's being put into the chat. If you could do that right now. That's right, Brenda's put that in there. It's a Menti link. And then at the end, we will share back with folks the results of what you've all contributed to that. So please go to the link and share a word that best describes what the Global Rights Connection International Human Rights Training Program has meant to you. This closing ceremony and this, you know, the words, reflection, the context that Ms. Lawler gave us, and then the engagements that we were all part of right now, really, for me, really provides me with a lot of hope for the future. She spoke a lot about the building blocks and the small step approaches and the small victories. And that really provides us with a lot of hope, encouragement to pursue this important work. I know that you, the participants, are very capable. You came into this program with those capacities, and hopefully now you feel even more capable to bring forward the plans that you've outlined during this training, the plans that you would like to move forward within your communities and your organizations to bring about the changes that you want to see happen. You have energy, you have enthusiasm, you have knowledge, you have experience, and hopefully now you have some, you know, new skills and approaches that you've learned, and that's helping to inform your work and bring the learning moments that you've had will be able to help you in the work that you do with others and help you to be more effective. I have no doubt that the past 10 weeks have been filled with knowledge, with discussions, with dreams. I was sitting in the evaluation, part of the evaluation day yesterday with the team here, listening to their very thoughtful reflections. And it's very clear that the 10 weeks have been full of moments of learning for all the participants, for the facilitators, and for us at Equitas. You've shared memories and with each other, and we're very privileged to have been part of those memories, and hopefully we will also have opportunities to reconnect and to build upon them in the future. We'd like to share a little video. So Jean-Claude is going to share a video that I think captures probably much more colorfully some of the sentiment that I've just shared with you. So would you like to share the video, Jean-Claude? Merci Jean-Claude. Alors, chers participants et chères participantes,
Dear participants, today you are joining the family of Equitas. Please share your challenges and your accomplishments in the following months. We have said that we were going to communicate with you the next few months, but you can, without any hesitation, to communicate with us. Don't hesitate to share your experiences, and whether it's on the personal level or professional level.
As human rights educators, our goal is to bring out the best in humanity. And as you complete this program, you leave these 10 weeks hopefully better equipped to achieve the change you want to see in the communities where you live with others, and see the kind of change that we want to see in the world. At Equitas, we're committed to continue supporting your efforts. We will facilitate ongoing exchanges through the Equitas community, online community, providing moral and technical support as you implement your individual plans and your education activities that you hope to implement in the future, and continue to support the efforts to build national, regional networks and connections across countries and across the world. Néanmoins, ultimement, c'est vous, les gens avec qui vous
People with you who you're working with, that you will make a difference in your communities. Connect with tools but it will be you who will have to take them and to make them flourish. It's a matter of continuing the relation with and between your work and your experience. So this can be powerful for you and in your fight, implementing and questioning your own values and attitudes, so your actions reflect what you want to see in other people. And finally, to preserving tightly knit relations that of people that have accompanied you during the whole process. We hope this trajectory, this journey will allow you to make changes real, slowly, step by step, and make those changes happen.
I think it would be great to hear now from some of the participants. We had a chance earlier on to hear from Find Faith. So thank you very much. We can see if you'd like to add to that in a few moments, Find Faith. But I'd like to ask, j'aimerais ça inviter en fait Cheikh Dieng de Sénégal, qui est le président de l'Association nationale pour la
President of the National Association of Development, to share a few reflections and in his group with the group. So it's your turn. Thank you, Madam Director. Thank you to the person of Equitas International, but also all thanks to Senegal, Equitas Senegal. I would like to take the floor on behalf of our group, Patrick Camille Kadisoyo. We were asked questions. The first question was, what does it mean to you, for you, the training for rights? Connection for Rights, it's the virtual as grouped educators of human rights in the world. The program has efficient response to, has allowed activists to create new relations and to explore new approaches to deepen knowledge on human rights, Connect for Human Rights. It's a unique opportunity for all defense activists. What were my impressions on the program and the group that I was working with? My impressions I can summarize them in different axes. The originality of the program on the Connecting for Rights, it's a training is marked by originality. It's designed in a way that it makes people participate. Participants participate to the program thanks to asynchronous training and the efficient participation of the technical team. It's also during the program, participants learn new knowledge and implement their new knowledge in their organizations. We also have noticed diversity in the participation because since the beginning of the program in unit number 1, if we click on the activity, we realize that of the diversity of participants that come from all the countries. You all see the personal experience of participants and their journey, their experience, and their engagement in the human rights community, and also the richness of the program, because outside of the approach, participants have learned to accept, to learn an approach based on rights, but also participants were able to learn on the plenary sessions and virtual sessions, and also to reinforce the efficiency. We also have the other aspect is we have a team of women, but also experts in their field, and their participation was of great support for all the participants. On the facilitation, Gigitas has helped us with 2 great trainings who have supported us without cease, and I'm talking about Khamisolo, Patrick. But the program was also so finally the program has allowed the creation of a new family of activists who have worked together to share their experience and expertise during the whole time. Now the group with which I'm working with, and I said it was visited by Patrick and Isabi. Our group was a French group. It was a very diversified group. There were men and women very engaged, very active in human rights defense. There was an idea that has really that struck me. There was an activity of the systemic activity that really struck me. This activity has allowed me to improve my work in a broad sense, but also has allowed me to understand better the context, the broader context. So what was my favorite event? It was the plenary session on rights system of United Nations for educators of human rights defense, facilitated by Elena and Politi of Human Rights Commissariat of United Nations. This session has allowed us to understand how we can use rights system, human rights of the United Nations in our work, using programs of the Council of Rights of Men. And finally, the last question, how am I going to use the knowledge that I have gained? I said it earlier, it's the systemic approach that has really helped me, and I like some starting with the training of members of organizations, and also and after this knowledge for a committee through programs but activities are planned for partner associations. And as a summary, we have knowledge. So I would like to thank all the members of, and I'm talking about facilitators, and would like to thank you, the team of Equitas, and but also the teams Equitas Senegal. Thank you. Thank you for your testimony. I will ask right, the Federation, Congolese Federation of Disabled People, and corner of the mobilization of resources to talk and share his experience. Thank you. Thank you, Madam Director. As Michael Dieng said, we will also, on the behalf of Group 1, we will present what has struck us the most during the session. So for us, now Connecting for Rights is a space for exchange and learn. So it's a dialogue, is a tool of learn to know and know how. It is not about a simple unilateral reception of knowledge or training content, but it's a participative approach of learning, proactive and virtual. So Connecting for Rights is a program, is very innovative program, as responding to the needs of the world. It's a world that has been marked by the COVID pandemic. It's an activity of network and implementation of experience of participants who will call upon their experience in matters of education and matters of education of human rights. It's based on a rich basis and on network, and also and complementary to other spheres. We have recourse to communication technology. We have to say that each week we have the impression, when we finish activities of the week, we have the impression to be ready to start and get involved in our activities, education activities. But when we start and when we start the program of the week, we were noticing that there were still a lot to learn, and we had to complete this learning with the content. It's simply a well-reflected program and interconnected. It's a place for us to thank the dynamic team of Equitas, the general director, the different directors and directors, male and female, Hervé, Jean-Claude, and others. Let's not forget the interns team and other personnel who have known, who are using their intelligence to develop this rich program with content and to be used, easy to use. Allow us to give tribute to two facilitators, Luna and Mark. Yes, actually, Luna and Mark are those two people who had a heavy mission of guiding members of Team 1 in their learning process. Still baptized Luna and Mark. They have had the privilege to work with the Guise, and quite remarkable, especially in their own style. They have, as a good father family, they were able to create a dynamic, create a motivation for each participant, and to go to the end of sudden with the distance barrier was lifted. we won't say that it's through screens that we are exchanging. Really, interactions was always on time, thanks to the activities, the ice-breaking activities that participants were starting the siege session feeling they were in in-person class.
Travaillons en petits groupes sur des sujets de cours avant de passer à la restitution dans la grande salle. Ceci a beaucoup facilité la
Which
création.
facilitated the creation of friendship and familiarizing item and activities. We also have created a signal where we would exchange continuously, even before the starting up of the presentation and presence of all the people. We could say without making any mistakes that the team, La Imac, was the most motivated, the most collaborative, and the more participative and more dynamic. This team had to organize seances and how to planify it in order to really work, obviously, on different participant planning and so forth. So it was really a good coordinator. It would be terrible for us not to mention the incredible work of this intelligent, participating, efficient person, which showed herself to be very dynamic. Michelle, I think, as he's talking about, very dynamic, the evaluation, the starting up the session, 35 minutes, 15 minutes, everything was organized swiftly and quickly. We were, this is a very special participation for these people, and we hope you have good continuation of career and participation. We could also say that the activity, that knowledge and defending human rights was really appropriate, and there were beautiful new learning modules, and we should really had left a great impression. The most important was the learning through the different aspects of, we know how it was important how to use this learning approach in order to allow each participant to feel good in the participation and the training and whatever. We also appreciated the reflection moments, precisely the exchanges across the study of different specific cases. These studies have created and a lot of exchanges in between the group. Well, because of the touchy caprices of the connection, but even then we were also able to participate due to this technology, even though it has its default. The presentation of Anne on the issues of security, the safety of the exchange in the digital world. We have learned a lot of how to use these elements and how to protect and guarantee the safety of our exchange, specifically for us, a defender of the rights of human, and also between the exchange of the information in between us, and also sharing the knowledge that we have learned. And we need to check and verify all our knowledge and our experiences, specifically on the perspective of gender, and later on the human rights elements, and then allow us to be in contact with many working partners and also members of organization, association that promotes the human rights defending. We had the opportunity to share with different teams the knowledge that we have learned in this fantastic program. A program that has a rich content and varied content. We wanted to, we cannot not thank Marc and the other person, I didn't get the name, and all the colleagues in which we had worked. Émilie du Sénégal, Franceline, Burkina Faso, Ossini d'Haïti, Zora, Maroc, Zaina, République démocratique du Congo, and an autre from the Congo, Sally from Benin, and the participant from Guinea. Our thanks goes also to Equitas and the HARE Partner Network. And they have known, very well known, and were able to make this program very efficient. And they were able to create, and they knew how to create this very efficient partnership and sharing, learning. Thank you for Equitas, thank you for initiative, thank you for all of this. Thank you very much, and thank you to the group. I know that we have heard the fine face earlier, some testimony from the group.
From your group, was there anything you wanted to add that you didn't have a chance to say from your presentation earlier on? Fine face. Not so sure if you're able to hear me.
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear
you. Can. Okay.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you wanted to add, or did you cover everything that you wanted to say?
Yeah, I think I almost done just part of it. I had to skip at the time, just a little thing I would want to add. And that is going to be on how I'm going to use the knowledge, from the program. That is the only area I would like to touch again. So I plan to use the knowledge I acquired during this training program to improve my organization's human rights education and advocacy works. The training improved my knowledge about human rights education strategies exceedingly. Thus, the first stages of using my knowledge from the training are to train others as captured in my individual plan. First, I will share my knowledge at the organizational level with staff and board members. The second stage will be in-group stage, where members of my 1 Million Youth Volunteers network of human rights defenders and promoters in the Niger Delta will be trained. They are meant to benefit from the knowledge directly first in the first instance. The third stage of the implementation of my individual plan will be about 30 minutes live appearance on radio station called Wish 99.5 FM Port Harcourt to share the training experience with no fewer than 500,000 people out of the over 5 million population of Rivers State where I live and work, who will tune into the program directly and benefit from knowledge that we gain from this program. On completion of the implementation of the individual plan, the knowledge acquired from the training will eventually and usefully be applied in my daily activities and other human rights education activities and initiatives that I have. This will include our annual training program titled Youth Training on Human Rights, Conflict Resolution and Peace Building Mechanism in the Niger Delta, started in 2018. The 1 Million Youth Volunteers network of human rights defenders and promoters in the Niger Delta started in 2019. And sensitization and awareness creation on human rights among youths and students in Rivers State started in secondary schools and universities in 2019 to build a culture of human rights in the young children to grow into society with awareness of human rights. So these are the last parts I would like to add to what I said before. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So thank you very much, Bryce. Merci, Jack, et puis également, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Bryce. Thank you for all of you, pour vos réflexions, vos commentaires, vos pensées. Beaucoup d'entre vous,
and the appreciation you had for the facilitation team. So this is a great moment to build back on those comments and ask the facilitators to turn on their cameras so that we can recognize their significant contribution to the Global Rights Connection program. It would not have been a success without the hard work and experience of this amazing facilitation team. If we were all in a room together, we would be standing up and applauding. So we're going to try and simulate that. And I'd ask Patrick Kamel, Marc Forget, Luna Francois, Steve McDonald, Madeleine Nguyen, Nduku Odmatageri, Christina Spango, and Hadi Saudio. Please turn on your cameras and allow us to celebrate you with a round of applause. Thank you very much. Merci beaucoup. Not quite the same thing. If we were all in the same room, we'd actually really hear the clapping. But it's nice to see all of you on the screen and be able to celebrate you and recognize your hard work. I'd like to now invite two of the facilitators to give us a brief testimonial on behalf of the group of facilitators to talk about their experience for Global Rights Connection and to give some last words of advice for the participants. So I'll start off first by inviting Madeleine Nguyen, who's an editor of the environmental geojournalism platform Info Congo and has been so since 2019. A very dynamic data journalist with approximately 10 years of experience in journalism that includes specifically specializing in environmental geojournalism. Madeleine is based in Cameroon, and most of her stories refer to data analysts, online investigations, and field trips that raise awareness about the link between environmental topics and human rights. So a fellow at the Rainforest Investigations Network with the Pulsar Center, the recent months have been spent investigating legal loopholes and illegal practices that enable forest conversion into agro-industrial plantation in the Congo Bassin and its impact on environment and local communities. So Madeleine, we were pleased to have you as part of the facilitation team. Please turn your camera on and take a moment to say a few words.
Thank you very much for the great presentation and also this wonderful opportunity to be here with you or to have spent all these 10 weeks with all the entire team. So what I will say is like in this challenging time of travel restriction due to COVID-19, the Global Rights Connection represents for me a wonderful opportunity to stay connected with a global network of human rights educators and being at the same time able to share experiences with fellow human rights educator colleagues virtually in a participatory ways. For this first edition of Global Rights Connection, it was a unique chance to meet with the great team of Equitas and its network of human rights educators coming from all over the world. At this first edition, I had the great opportunity to work with Steve as a Group 3 co-facilitator, and I mostly enjoyed the engagement of each participant of our group. And I assume all of them are here today, as well as participants from all the English groups and also Francophone groups. And I use this opportunity to really thank you guys. Your participation gave us, Steve and me, Christina and Duko from English group, the strength and inspiration to better co-facilitate the Global Rights Connection program. I'm so grateful also to Equitas, who made this program possible, and all the team behind the Global Rights Connection for the content and support during the entire Global Rights Connection program. A great thanks to Rayan, who has been a powerful support to our group. And last word to all the participants of GRC, our last advice will just be continue to do the great job of human rights education that you are all doing in your different countries, so that we can all together build a global culture of human rights around the world. Great, thanks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Madeleine. Thank you.
I will now invite the Vice President of the Senegal. She's been working at this organization for almost 10 years right now. And each year she builds an action plan and makes recruitment for the manpower. So she's fully aware and she's fully engaged in the awareness program. And she's a chief of communication, and she's really leading a program in a university. She's very be part of this team. And we can't wait to hear your reflections about your experience with Equitas. So it's up to you right now. Good morning, and thank you very much. And thank you very much for the participant. To tell you that I am a member of the Senegal Network for the Education, that we're gathering participant from the SISPH. Firstly, regarding Connection for All Rights, I would like to say that it's very fantastic to have this kind of training for the human rights. I think everything is good. Something that was suggested right at the beginning, but that it's through the participation that we're able to choose this title, which is a very inspired title, because it has the content. The content is the human rights that is guiding us, and the form is that we'll be able to use internet in order to be able to exchange for human rights. It was a new experience as far as a course through numerical devices, and then as far as the follow-up of the work and the synchronized questions and answer, I was really happy to see our little baby project walk and stand up through all the recommendations that we have done. We hope that through all this, the Connection for the Rights will be able to work in a chameleon walk and not flow, but maybe slowly but surely. Each time there's a step that's being put down or made for the equality and defending of their rights and human rights, and a culture of the human rights, the defense of the human rights, and the approach based on the defense of the human rights. I would like to invite participants to develop more their networking and maintain the pedagogic development to develop the individual plan as well that are already elaborate and that we can improve, and join all the other ones that are connected with to maintain, because it's only a beginning, so that we can talk really about ambassadors for the human rights. The work needs to continue, and the work needs to continue offline, and other networks that will be developed, so we could together form an influential network in different countries across the world. And we continue to work together hand in hand. I would like to thank the director of this project. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. And your advices will be followed. Without any doubt, you probably remember connecting with the rights as a participant, as a animator, facilitators or something. For sure, it will remain very happy. We discuss a lot at Equitas these days for the importance of really become with yourself fully in the defense of the human rights defense, and also the education on human rights defense. And without any doubt, you have all participated, really present, being yourself as a whole, and you were able to really, you're inspired one and each other, you know, it's making connection. And after this experience, we hope that you will never feel alone. You found friends, allies, you found a person with whom you have links of equality, and we hope that you feel being part of a community, like she said at the beginning, a family, so in the defense of human rights, and you feel like you're part of what we say warmly, the family of Equitas. Your participation and this belongingness, of course, it entails it's a challenge, your choice. We share your engagement and your involvement in the heart of this community. You have a really large network of people, very important resources people, and that are fighting each on their community, respective community, but also be part of you, and they're listening to you and they're working across the world. We really hope that we feel this connection that is filtered through the last couple of weeks. To the name of the team, I want to thank you to have spent the last 2 weeks with us. And I hope sincerely that you would continue with a lot of courage, perseverance. It is time right now to thank other people. Many of you have been mentioned, but the apprenticeship, the learners, the students, the participants, when we have during the video projection, we've seen them. So we want to mention the involvement of each one of them and whatever participating they brought with this trainee group. We really need to notice that it's not just the last 2 weeks. It is really, if we are here today at the end of this online program, it's because there was a great work team behind all this. Of course, it based on the experiences and within the organization, but to bring it in line, it needs a lot of creativity, perseverance, and innovation. So I really want to invite Catherine Farmer, Denise Molina, Jean-Claude, and Jean-Sébastien Lavallée. Open your camera, please, so we could see you and celebrate you, and mention and acknowledge all the work that you have done and that you've been carrying on your shoulder for a year. So it's like, again, the same thing. Let's pretend we're all together in the same room, standing up and really applauding so we could recognize you. Yes, 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 yes. So honoring virtually what we're doing. I also wanted to say that many people that were part of the ideas right from the beginning. They were part of the team at the beginning of the team. So they were the pioneers of building up this program. So a lot of people that really work hard, and we need to mention that it was really an incredible organizational group. And so thank you very much for all these people in Equitas.
Without the support from our financial supporters. Global Affairs Canada, so the Government of Canada, is an important foundational supporter of our programs, and Global Rights Connection makes no exception. Nous remercions également les organisations.
Also thank different organizations of the following people that wanted to bring their financial support for this first edition of the Education and Rights Defenders. So American Jewish Ambassade of Canada in Burkina Faso and in Benin. The Commissary of Commissary in Haiti, Carrefour Canadien International, Fondation de la Famille Bryan, Famille Yazin, Eliadit, et Elena Prévost and John.
Equitas is proud to announce the recipients for the Charlot Jeudi bursary. This bursary recognizes the very exceptional role and contribution of Charlot Jeudi, who is an exceptional champion for human rights, for LGBTQ person rights in Haiti and across the world. He was a valued partner of Equitas for many years and a friend. And his exceptional achievements opened up space for LGBTQI+ activism and human rights education in Haiti, and inspired human rights activists and human rights educators across the world. This bursary is intended to cover the participation fees of the recipient along with the publication of his or her story in our website. And this year, the Charlotte Joly Bursary is awarded to Tori Koulibaly. Tori Koulibaly, donc je vous invite aussi à ouvrir votre caméra.
Invite you to present yourself, to open your camera, originally from La Guinea, General Secretary of the organization, Basé and Connected. It's an organization that has a mission to defend the LGBTQ people in case of violence. Oh la la. And thank you for her participation in helping also the handicaps and the LGBT community. Equitas. At the heart of this organization, the role that we have consists of assuring the administrative task of the organization in order to assure a good operational system, the very fundamental and organizational of the organization, and also contribute to defense of the LGBT people and the people at victims of. It was also vice president of the organization and the national coordination of the Fonds Mondial. His participation in Connection for les droits, we hope that will allow him to not only to bring all his professional capacity, but also to train better the members of his organization, and finally to contribute to end the abuse of the LGBT. So we congratulate you, Lord, for your wonderful work for the LGBT people, and also for your commitment, your perseverance, your contribution all through the time that you have defended the work for the defending of the human rights. Thank you very much. I'm sorry, the names I didn't catch up properly. Je suis certain.
All of you, as we've been hearing actually all this morning, one can really note that there's a common theme that keeps reemerging, and that is just how much people bring themselves into the work. So we're really curious and excited to hear about what the Global Rights Connection program has meant for you. And so I believe that we will be able to see the fruits of your contributions in the Mentimeter that Brenda's going to show for us on the screen. Looking forward to seeing that as it comes up. So in one word, what did Global Rights Connection mean to you? Un mot, qu'a représenté Connexion pour les droits pour vous? So we see right at the very center e-learning, but not too far, because the larger the words are, actually indicate that a large majority of people chose those words. So we also see diversity, and we see intersectionality, and we see strength, we see innovation. On voit formidable.
Fantastic, formidable. We see poetry. We see the cycle of the learning, unlearning. We see a public space, a safe space, dream, awakening.
We see
On
empowerment. We see a learning experience. We see encouragement, and we see the future. And we see so much more. C'est vraiment magnifique.
Really, really wonderful. All these words put together, all like this, it's really incredible. We really could capture the experience of each individual. Thank you very much for this participation. So it is with those words, these beautiful, beautiful words, that we conclude the last, the edition of the Human Rights Program. And as we put the accent of the importance of coming and to bring yourself totally to it, it is absolutely appropriate to invite Steve McDonald, which is one of our facilitators, which will play for us. He will share his talent with us, and he will play a song, and he will offer us with a song in order to conclude. Alors, je vois Steve.
This is a very special song for us at Equitas because it highlights the conclusion of one of our training programs, this first edition of the online training program, Global Rights Connection, and it really unifies all of the Equitas community. So we're going to share the lyrics in the chat, and we invite everybody, regardless of whether you think you have a good voice or not, we all have a voice. So we invite everybody to sing along.
Thanks very much, Odette. So I hope everybody will join in. If I'm not mistaken, the lyrics are about to appear in the chat for you. You may not be familiar with this song, but you'll pick up the melody quickly. And even if you can't grasp the words, just hum along. On Zoom, singing together can sometimes sound a little bit chaotic, but I think we're just going to decide that we don't care today about the chaos. We're just going to have some fun and let it be chaotic. So if it sounds a bit crazy, then let's just do it anyway. Okay, so this is called This Little Light of Mine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine.
You can sing all together.
I'm gonna let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
Let it shine.
Where I go.
It's chaotic, but it's okay. It's fun.
Yeah.
People were asking what are the words of the song. It was supposed to be put in the chats.
I'm gonna let it shine.
I'm gonna let it shine. Let it shine. Let it shine. We'll sing in harmony. We'll sing in harmony. Let it shine. Let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna
let it shine, let it shine, let it shine.
Let it shine. Wow.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you. So that concludes the closing ceremony. Thank you. Merci à tout le monde.
Merci, merci.
Merci à tout le monde. Avant de quitter, on va prendre une dernière photo tous en groupe. Donc, la photo finale de Connectons.
We're going to take the final picture before leaving to finish this beautiful program. So those who feel comfortable, they can open the cameras for the last picture.
Après la photo, en fait, rester quelques secondes. Il y a quelques messages qui
So we'll remain a few seconds after the picture.
Je vois que les caméras sont ouvertes. Alors, le décompte. Donc, 3, 2, 1.
3, 2, 1. Please smile.
Parfait, nous avons eu la photo.
So here is the picture.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine.
Lucky. Let it shine.
I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine.
Let it
shine. Let it shine. Let it shine.
Thank you, Equitas. I'm grateful, everyone.
Merci à tous.
I think Equitas can bring us together again, maybe after every 3 months or 6 months. Let's meet like this and discuss. It will be nice.
Yes, very true, very true.
Merci beaucoup pour les magnifiques voix, les magnifiques chanteurs. Dernier petit message avant qu'on vous quitte.